Morning TV viewers, it's still Daybreak Africa. If you just tuned in, reaching from studio saying ONDO City, of course, I am EZEKIEL OGAR. This morning we'll be talking on the Niger Republic coup, how it tends to affect Nigeria and African democracy at large. And now, since 2000, we have had a series of coups in Africa, and this includes 3 in Mali, 3 in Burkina Faso, 3 in Guinea, and 1 in Chad. This turns out to be the Niger's 5th military coup since it gained independence in 1960 from the French. And this morning we have ADEWALE Stephen, the S.D.P. ONDO chapter chairman, to discuss this topic with Daybreak Africa.
Thank you for
joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All this crisis has been on for close to a week, or if not a week already, but we thought initially that it would just be settled amongst themselves, but recently we've seen how it has raised eyebrows, and even the ECOWAS has shown interest in intervening into the whole situation. So what is your own opinion on the current crisis?
Thank you very much. What we are witnessing in Niger Republic today is a reflection that our democracy is failing, not only in West Africa, but in everywhere across the Africa. Remember, sometimes in 2000, there was the first military coup took place in Mali. Then the second military coup took place in Burkina Faso. Now, presently in West Africa, we have 3 countries in West Africa who are now being controlled, which are now being controlled by the military government. And these 3 countries, they are francophone countries. Now, if you look at these 3 countries, now we are looking at Nigerian Republic today, you realize that there are different factors that motivated the military leaders to take over. And one of their excuses was that there were a lot of issues in terms of development, poverty, and all that. Now, let's now focus on Niger Republic. You realize that Niger Republic happens to be one of the most landlocked countries in West Africa. In terms of landmass, it has more landmass than Nigeria. Nigeria is about 923,000 square kilometers, while Nigerian Republic is about 1.2 million square kilometers. So about the 80% of that land is landlocked, and since 1960 they've been having a lot of issues with development. And then recently, with what is happening with the francophone, with the French government, you know, since 1960 when the French government left, so they didn't live the way the British government left Africa. The British government, when they were leaving, they left everything. They left us with everything. So they didn't bother to look back. But in terms of francophone countries, the French government continue to control their resources. They continue to control their currency, and they continue to dictate the pace and the affairs and the daily affairs of the country. So that led to a lot of issues. Now, when it started in Mali in 2000, the people in Mali stood up and said they've had enough with the French government. Now the French government decided to move their base to Burkina Faso. Now people in Burkina Faso stood up against the French government, and now they moved the base to Nigerian Republic. Now Niger Republic happens to be the only country in Sahel presently that is in alliance with the French government, and that's why the French government and the United States of America government are showing more interest in what is going on in the Nigerian Republic. But if you actually look at what is happening now, you realize that our democracy is failing. Now our leaders, especially the ECOWAS needs to be able leaders need to be able to tell themselves the truth. If poverty continues, you realize that something like this will continue to happen. In Nigerian Republic now, the ECOWAS leaders are insisting that the military government must hand over back to the Badoum government. But we discovered that when Badoum government emerged about 2 years ago, he actually campaigned against insecurity. He campaigned against poverty. But now 2 years after, you discover that the living cost has increased. Now, what now broke the camel's back in the Nigerian Republic was the recent removal of subsidy in Nigeria. Remember, before now, Nigeria, like I said earlier, the Nigerian Republic is a landlocked country, and they also operate a petroleum economy. But most of their petrol, they got it from Nigeria. But now, since subsidy has been removed, so presently in Nigerian currency, fuel is being sold in Nigerian Republic at the rate of about 3,000 naira. That's in Nigerian currency per liter. So that was what eventually led to this crisis that we are witnessing now. So the most important thing to do now is not to intervene in whatever is going on there, because we know that this country has sovereignty. The first thing, when it happened in Mali, the West African countries decided to intervene, but at the end of the day, they realized that it's going to be difficult for them to remove that military government. So the same thing with what is happening in Nigerian Republic now. It's going to be extremely difficult for Tinubu government to intervene, especially with what is going on in our own country. The mood of the country at this moment is not going to encourage any or support any leader to intervene in whatever is going on in a neighboring country. And you know, government is also the reflection of the people. The coup actually was widely accepted by the people. Like I said, people actually, the man who was removed campaigned against poverty. He campaigned against insecurity, but when he got there, everything tripled. The insecurity became something else, and the poverty worsened. So the poverty situation worsened. So now the military government is there. So we now have to observe how the military government, who came to power and said they removed the past government based on the insecurity and the worsened poverty situation, will be able to change that narrative.
Actually, at this point, I don't think the Nigerian citizens are actually in support of the coup. And talking about how best to react, I tend to wonder how best African and international partners are supposed to react to. You know, they can't exactly go out to endorse the coup. And Nigeria particularly have been mounted pressure to react. Now, upon Nigerian, the president himself cannot actually go out to endorse the coup based on the fact he's the ECOWAS chairman. So, and at the same time, I don't think it's right for him to just keep silent. So how best do you think Nigerians and African countries should react to this particular
situation? Now, ECOWAS countries have already taken the necessary actions. So they've placed the economic sanction on Nigerian Republic.
We can't be sure it's going to be really standard.
That's exactly where I'm going. Now they've already placed the economic sanctions, but we need to understand the complexities of the West African countries. Now, ECOWAS as of today is the largest shareholder in ECOWAS is Nigeria. The 83% of the fund of ECOWAS is being contributed by Nigeria. And if you look at the economy of West Africa, you discover that virtually all the countries around Nigeria, so they depend on Nigeria for survival. That's one. Then the second issue is that most of the West African countries, they are not as united as we actually thought. You know, we have this francophone divide, then we have this anglophone divide. And remember that the francophone countries, most of the francophone countries are now being controlled by the military government. The first is Mali, then the second one is Guinea. Now Niger Republic, even Chad Republic, which happens to be between the Central African Republic and the West African Republic, but another neighbor to Nigerian Republic, is also being controlled by the military government. So as a result of that, this economic sanction, it's not really going to work if Nigeria fails to take its stand. So, but now people are now agitating. Even the Nigerian government is making moves to go beyond the economic sanction. So they are trying. So many of them feel the best way to involve themselves is to involve our military in Nigerian Republic and remove the government. But it's not actually going to work. Number one, the reason why it's not going to work is that if you compare what was happening in Nigeria during the Obasanjo government, when a military coup took place in Sao Tome and Principe, and Obasanjo went there and removed that government, that military government, and replace it with the man that was there before. So if you look at the situation between that time and now, things have really changed. Number one, our military is no longer as strong and as formidable as it used to be. Forget everything that they keep saying that, oh, Nigeria happens to be the largest military force in Africa. Military in the 21st century has gone beyond human power. In terms of manpower, yes, we have it. We have the population. But when you want to talk about the equipment, the facilities, we don't actually have it. For example, recently we bought 6 Tucano Superjet. Now, it took us 3 years to get to receive that order. And at that time, they paid about $586 million. Now, if you look at our foreign exchange and what we have in the foreign reserve, now we don't even have that kind of financial power to buy something like that. And you cannot compare Nigeria to a country like South Africa. South Africa can easily manufacture some of these things in their own country, even Morocco, even Egypt, even Algeria. So in terms of all this, Nigeria is no longer where it used to be in the time past. And when you look at the insecurity situation in Nigeria, our security situation has worsened compared to what it was in the past. And because Nigeria and Nigerian Republic is very close to Nigeria, so the Boko Haram militants and terrorists rather and ISWAP, so they are based there. Even some of the people who are crossing to Borno Republic, they were coming from there. So now we need to be extremely careful, especially when people are now on the side of the new military regime. So we have to be extremely careful. Now along the line, it's not really going to work. The best thing to do is for the ECOWAS leaders to be able to tell themselves the truth and to be able to admonish each other, to make sure that they prioritize the interest of their people. Because if you don't prioritize the interest of your people, if you don't work towards moving a lot of people out of poverty line, so this crisis will definitely continue, especially in the countries around the West African countries, around Nigeria.
People, it's more like endorsing coup. And I won't forget the statement that Tinubu made at the time he was made the chairman. He spoke intensely against the issue of coup. Now, if you want us to maybe frolic a little with Niger, because indeed we have been allies with Niger for a very, very long time. We have a trade, and like you said, it's more like we have an open trade amongst each other. But trying to just keep cool, it's more like you are endorsing certain irregularities in countries. I don't think it will give ECOWAS, it will give the Western region a good name per se. So I think we should actually go all out, speak against it as much as possible. Don't you think so?
Well, the best military government. The best military government is actually, the worst democratic government is better than the best military government. So nobody in his or right senses will go out there to endorse the military, the military government or this coup that just took place in the Nigerian Republic. But we have to be sincere. You have to face the reality on ground, and the reality is this: we have a democratic system of government which we have been practicing, which at a point in time was endorsed by virtually all the countries in West Africa. All these countries we talk about, Mali, Guinea, Nigerian Republic, Chad Republic, there was a time that virtually all of them embraced democracy. Now, when you now have a situation where you have a democratic system of government where, number one, we are supposed to have a limited term. That's what the constitution says. Let's look at Nigerian Republic, for example. Let's not even talk about what happened in Mali, in Burkina Faso. What led to this crisis in Niger was because in 2000, when military government handed over to the democratic government, to a civilian. Now they were supposed to be there for 5 years. Then after 5 years, they were supposed to be passed to another civilian government. But along the line, the same civilian government will go ahead and remove that clause from the constitution, so they want to be there for a lifetime. Then you see a lot of you see the kind of lives that the kind of luxurious lifestyle that they continue to live. And don't forget that, like I said earlier, this is a landlocked country. This is a country that a lot of people are actually wallowing in abject poverty, and it's quite easy when people are going through the poverty cycle. It's quite easy to change their mentality. I mean, to kind of lie to them. Why is it that people in the northern part of the country, for example, especially in the northeastern part of the country, why do you think that over time, between 1999 till even recently, that even our politicians who fail to contribute to the development of their people will continue to influence those people to vote for the wrong people during the election day? It's because of the little money that they are dishing out to them. So the same thing was what was happening in Nigerian Republic. So now if the masses now came out and said, look, that we don't want these people to govern us, that doesn't mean that this military government is going to solve their problem. They have been in this problem since 1960. Until now, the problem has not been resolved. But what we are saying is that you cannot say because we are condemning the military coup, then we are now forcing our own democratic government to go and do what is wrong, or to go and do what is going to affect us in the long run in Nigeria. So what we are saying is that the Tinubu government, number one, the charity should begin from home. So we should try as much as possible to learn from all these things that are happening around us. Democracy is the best. Now we are sitting down here, we can talk freely because we are having democratic system of government. Something like this could not have happened in Chad Republic or in Guinea or in any other countries being controlled by autocrats. But in Nigeria, we have all this. So we have to learn from this. Our leaders must understand that they have to prioritize the interest of the people. If you don't prioritize it, all the coups that have taken place, even here in Nigeria, those coups succeeded just because people supported the coup. If people had not supported those coups, they would not have succeeded, because one of the ingredients of embarking on a military coup is to make sure that at least they influence people's opinion. So if you're unable to influence people's opinion, so it's going to be difficult for you to be able to take over. But a situation whereby people are already tired, overwhelming majority are already saying, oh, this government is the worst. So if anybody comes on board, they would rather see that person as the next messiah. So that is what is happening there. So what we are saying is that ECOWAS, it shouldn't be that it's only when there was a military coup that ECOWAS leaders will take their stand, will start shouting everywhere. And another thing is that all these ECOWAS leaders, they should know that it's not when there was a coup that they will start carrying the agitation of the US and the French government. What we are seeing in Nigeria Republic is a proxy war. Niger Republic is very strategic to either both the US and the French government. Nigeria Republic is a landlocked country, but it's very rich in uranium. In fact, in France today, there is a saying that out of 4 bulbs that they light daily in France, that 3 of that the uranium that light 3, they got it from Nigeria Republic. So that's 50. So what they get, and the French government is also the owner of the company that is mining that uranium. So they control all the businesses there. Even there in Nigeria, about 70% of what we mine in Nigeria in uranium, in our uranium, we actually sell it to that company. So that is the company that control that market in the world. So now it's very strategic to them. Another thing is that it's also the only country where the United States of America has its drone base in West Africa, which means that in case if there is going to be any issue, it's quite easy for US to move its military, its marine, and every other security forces to that region. From there they can easily infiltrate other parts of West Africa. So the same thing is also applicable to France. So now what they are fighting is a proxy war. So they are just using some of these our democratic rulers for them to be able to carry their proxy war. So we should leave them, because now some are already saying, oh, Russia is also going to be involved. If you see what happened in the last 24 hours, common people in the streets, they were even raising the flag of Russia. So it shows that it's already a kind of war between the superpowers. And it
gives me reason to worry, because I'm not sure as to foreign involvement. Recently, I heard Russia or the Wagner mercenary are also involved in the situation. Yes. Is it always going to be like this? In the case of Libya, we knew what happened. We heard rumors as United States being involved in that war and all that for their own selfish interests. Are we supposed to be worried as to foreign involvement in every chaos in Africa?
Yes, it will continue, because these African countries were very unfortunate that we gained independence at the time when there was a Cold War in the world. When we were gaining independence in 1960, in the 1950s, when we started gaining independence, virtually all these countries, they were under one superpower or the other. So now, and it was a period of Cold War when there was this division between the United States of America and the then Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, which we now know as Russia. So now, as these countries were gaining independence, and at that time, because some of these countries already had a lot of issues with their colonial masters, like in Nigeria, for example, some of our leaders had issues with British government. So there are a lot of other countries, so they had issues in Ghana, for example. So even in Congo. So there were a lot of issues, but all these countries, they didn't want a situation whereby the new African countries will gain independence, then they will now move their loyalty to the Soviet Union. So the first thing they did was to impose their own the people who listened to them, who were loyal to them. So they imposed them on the people. So that was the first mistake that they made. But to them, it wasn't a mistake, because it's something that actually favored them. But to us, it actually hurt us in Africa. So the crisis had continued since 1960, so it persists till date. So it will definitely continue as long as Africa remain backward, as long as we remain underdeveloped, and as long as our leaders continue to prioritize the interest of the West over the interest of their own people. So it will definitely continue. But so back to back to what we were discussing. My own point is this, that it is a very wrong time for Africa ECOWAS leaders to carry the proxy war of the West. So they should let the people who have the battle, they should let them fight the battle. Yes, it's a democracy. Their fear is that because something is happening in our neighboring country, if care is not taken, it might actually get to our own doorstep. But you should learn from those things, because we don't have control over whatever is happening in Niger Republic. We don't have control over whatever is happening in Chad Republic. We don't have control over whatever is happening in any of those other countries. So we have controls over whatever is happening in our own country. So which means that our leaders should learn from that and do the right thing. All the coup that are taking place in either Nigeria Republic or Nigeria, if you look at their excuses are always the same. They say, oh, there was crisis in the land, insecurity in the land, poverty in the land, rising in living cost and all that. So these were the same set of things. So our leaders should be able to do the right thing. They should be able to prioritize the welfare of their own people. So if we do that, we don't have to even bother. The United States of America we talk about today, they don't have to be afraid that probably there is a military coup in Cuba or military coup in Colombia or in any other country, because as long as their own country is working, others will even learn from them. So that is Nigeria can only be the genuine leader in this 21st century. We can only be the genuine leader of West Africa by living by example, by showing all those other countries that this is actually how to do the right thing. But if you are doing wrong thing in your own home, how are you going to be able to teach others what to do outside? So these are the problems that we have on ground. Those are the things that we actually need to be resolved. But it's not the Nigeria battle, especially at this time that we have a lot of issues at home, that we have weakening foreign exchange, and our foreign reserve is already drained. So we don't have the resources, we don't have the facility to involve ourselves physically in whatever is going to happen in the Niger Republic.
No, not
well, just
to
as
actually,
sorry to cut you, but just as so many other leaders have come out to say this could be a global threat to the economy of so many nations, do you see the feasibility of Niger actually succeeding to keep that democratic system of government?
Well, it's great. You mean whether they are going to succeed in
yes,
keeping it?
Yes, if there is any possible means they might be able to restore their democratic.
Well, if you look at experience has taught us that it's going to be extremely difficult. When it happened in Chad Republic about 2 years ago, so the new military government agreed that they were going to hand over in 18 months. But now the government has been there. Now the military government has been there for over 24 months. Once they took over government, it's difficult for them to take it back. Because now another problem that our leaders need to look at is, if you look at, they need to look into, is the fact that if you look at US, for example, you realize that the people who are guiding, who guide the president is quite different from the military. So these are the things that our leaders are supposed to be talking about, because this military coup, they are not just happening without a cause. So there is a cause. The same set of people who are taking over powers are the ones who have control over the seat of power. In Nigeria, for example, all the people who guide our president, they are still the military officers. And remember, the military officers, they are not even loyal to the president, because their first primary of loyalty is to the chief of army staff and to the chief of defense staff. So the same thing is happening across the West African countries. But in Britain, how do I put it now? It's a part of metropolitan police, but a special force out of metropolitan police that guide the prime minister. The same thing is also happening in France. In US, it is secret service. So in all those other countries, even in Russia, it's the same thing. But in our own situation in West Africa, we hand over everything to the military government, to the military class. So it's quite easy for them to say, to just order and say, take over the government. So we need to start working on some of these things. We need to be able to decentralize some of these structures that we have, not only in Nigeria, in other countries in West Africa. But it's going to be difficult to do if you have a leader that doesn't believe in his own, that cannot stand his own ground, that cannot stand on his own ground. In Nigeria, for example, look at what has been happening since the Buhari government, since Tinubu government came in. There are a lot of corrupt people in government, even in his own government, and it's not looking like the government is going to make any move to even probably to scrutinize what has happened in the past. So the same thing is going to be difficult to even scrutinize what is going on in the military or in the or in the police force. So the same. So these are the things that are happening across board. So it's going to be, so it's not possible for us to go back to that Bazoum administration again, no matter what happened. And you see the hypocrisy of even the ECOWAS. Last week they sent the Chad president to meet with Bazoum and other aggrieved leaders in the Niger Republic. It's actually hypocrisy in the sense that even the person you sent there himself was actually a military head of state. So who are you expecting such a person to be loyal to? So definitely he's going to be loyal to his own primary base. So these are the problems that we have. We need to be sincere with ourselves. The military coup are taking place in Nigeria Republic, and it has succeeded already. So the best we can do at this time is to uphold that economic sanction. If those economic sanctions are upholded, if Nigerians ensures that all the countries that are actually supposed to implement those agenda, that they implement them effectively, definitely that might force the new military junta to hand over to the democratic government in the nearest future. It happened in the same Nigeria Republic in 2000. But when it happened, despite the fact that at that time Nigeria was even in a better position than today, Obasanjo did not go there and say, okay, let's go and take over the government, let's go and remove them. What Obasanjo did was similar to what Tinubu is doing now. But at that time, Obasanjo ensured that those sanctions were fully implemented. Then under 1 year, that military administration handed over to the civilian government. So the same thing can also be done in this situation. But considering what has been going on since last week, it's not looking like even the ECOWAS countries and even Nigerian leaders are going to put their hands together to be able to implement.
As it stands currently, it's more like the default excuse used for every coup has been economic downturn and the issue of security, which is more like we are living it currently in Nigeria. When we talk about economic, there's not the right term about. Talk about insecurity, it's God help us all. At this point, should we be worried?
No, we cannot be worried in Nigeria. Now, if you look at, if you study the history of military coup, realize that Nigeria has already gone beyond that level. Now, the military coup can only succeed in an environment where it's quite easy for maybe the initiator of the coup to announce to the entire country that we've taken over. But now, since the last coup that took place since 1985, when President Ibrahim Babangida came on board, the first thing he did was to decentralize the Radio Nigeria. Unlike before that, we just have one Radio Nigeria, one NTA. So now we have a lot of now we have a lot of medium to communicate. To communicate. The other thing is that if you look at Abuja, the way Abuja is today, it's going to be difficult for us to worry about whether there will be military coup, because even in the military class, they are no longer as united as they used to be. If you meet with any military officer today, you realize that the actually is either probably belongs to APC or belongs to PDP. Even within the APC, they belong to different to different factions. Then aside from that, our civil, the same military class that we talk about, realize that they cannot succeed without even the civilian. You need military officers need civilians. For if you see what they will write, it is the civilians that will always write it for them. It's the same civilian that will be the attorney general that will change all the laws, that will do virtually everything. Now all those individuals, they are involved in the democratic system that we talk about today. So it's going to be extremely difficult. And today, the mood of the country, no matter what is going on, the mood of the country, people still believe that the system of government we have now is still the best system of government. That is the truth. You cannot compare this if you have lived through the military system of government and you are now witnessing what we are having now. Despite what is going on, you realize that this is actually still the best. You can just wake up during the military era and see just a military officer, unknown military officer, just come out and kill about 5-6 people. Extrajudicial killings everywhere. So, but now we have this freedom of speech. Now we have this liberty. Now people can decide to stand to and say, okay, that I want to carry placard, that I want to agitate against the government. But you cannot do that under the military. You can't do that under the military government. Now, there are a lot of things, development that are taking place just because we have right to actually exercise our our freedom of speech. Recently, they came out with 8,000 naira policy, but when they realized that people actually stood against it, but under the military government, you cannot do that. So things works better under the democratic system of government. So we cannot be worried in Nigeria because all the ingredients that can actually make coup to succeed. It's not only what is going on in the country. If coup can happen in Nigeria, it could have happened during the Buhari government, because at that time the country was just on a life support machine. Nobody was in control, but it didn't happen. So we can't be worried. Nigeria is now bigger, and we have better structure, and we have more resources to nip all those things in the bud. Another thing is that if you look at the military today, the military is no longer concentrating in one place. Before, it used to be Dodo Barrack. But the first thing that Babangida did after the OGAR coup was to move the seat of power from Lagos to Abuja, and he ensured that the seat of power in Abuja, it is owned, so you cannot see any military headquarters around there. So which means that, and the only people you are, even the Air Force, you cannot see them around there. So like before that, everything was domiciled within the Dodon Barrack. So within that Dodon Barrack, it's easy for a military officer, presidential guard, for them to just quickly move in and seize the president. But it's not going to be possible now. So we now have better structure. We have barracks in Abuja. We have all those barracks everywhere now. So even if Abuja takes over, it's easy for military in Niger, in all those other places to move in. So it's not going to work.
At this point, I tend to worry a little bit as to our level of democracy in Africa. Now we have rapid increase when it comes to coup. Is it that we don't really know how best to handle democracy per se? Do we really need this military rule? Because we don't have a clear understanding of what democracy entails. And it is a system that was just imposed on us. It's not a system that we're actually used to. If you look at Africa generally, an average African man or even African woman is somebody that wants to hold on to power for a very long time. And if you look at the system that we're even practicing before the arrival of these imperial powers, realize that it was a system whereby we have kings and they will have to rule for a very long period of time. Now, when they now wanted to hand over, in all those periods, like I said, when they wanted to hand over, it would have been a very good system, assuming they handed over to those that actually understand the system, those who meant well at that time. But when they were handing over, they handed over to only those who were loyal to them. And those individuals, because many of them don't even understand what it takes to even rule the countries. So now they took over. The first thing they did was to ensure that all the people who were their enemies, so all of them, they killed them. So they executed those individuals, and the crisis continued. And in Nigeria, in Niger, everywhere, so we have been having that problem since that time. And we have a situation where we now have leaders who, by the time they get there, what they will say is different and what they will do is different from what they will say, what they said during the campaign. So it's a system that over time probably we are going to get it right. But if you look at Nigeria as an example, even if you look at even South Africa we talked about today, it's their democracy that with the level it is today, it wasn't at that level. Even when Mandela, that we're talking about, when Mandela was there were still a lot of issues at that time, and there are still issues now, but things continue to improve. Now, if you look at even Nigeria today, look at where we started in 1999. People keep talking about this election as the worst election, but it's unfortunate that people don't even know. It's because we don't even know the history of the country. There was a time in this country that we don't even have a PVC. There was time in this country that it's easy for you to say, okay, Katsina, over 3 million people voted, Kano, where are those millions now? Because now, one way or the other, some improvements are being brought into the system. Now, there was a time that whatever, even if you vote here, if we know that people will vote here, that we after voting we scored maybe 3 of us voted and we scored 3, Abuja can decide to change it. Yar'Adua became the president without people's vote in 2007. So we're in this country. But at that time, military coup did not take place. So is it now that military coup? No, it's not going to happen. But things are actually improving. The system is improving. And you see the last election, a lot of people are now becoming awakened. They are getting involved in the system. You see even the obedience that we talk about today. Most of the people who are supporters of, they are young people.
So it shows that people are beginning to get involved in their in the system. So with time, definitely we are going to get there. So, but in all those other countries, it's going to take them a longer period of time for them to get there. But Nigeria can only play a very good role if we put our own house in order. There was a time that if Nigeria sneezes, all the rest of West African countries will catch the code. Whatever Nigeria says said at that time, all of them will listen. But now it's not. So gone are the days, because an average African countries today, we cannot even dictate to South Africa. We cannot dictate to Egypt. We cannot dictate to Morocco. We cannot even dictate to Angola. So there are a lot of problems within. So, but we have the resources, we have the brain, we have the brawn, we have all the facilities for us to be the leader of Africa. It's not just about the population alone, but we have everything it takes to be the leader, even the resources, the mineral resources. But we need to be able to utilize that, so that by the time we are involving ourselves in all this coup, in all this crisis, then they will listen to us. You know, it's even a slap on the face of our president that he took over he took over as the chairman of ECOWAS and a week, less than a week after. And if you listen to his speech, it was actually emphatic about the fact that no West African countries was not going to tolerate military coup and other. You know, from what we have understood about coup took a longer time to plan. The coup plotters must have started at least a month before they will eventually carry it out. So if it were to be countries where they respect Nigeria president, if it were to be before now, those coup plotters would have just paused and said, well, let's see what is going on first. But they still went ahead and carried out their coup, because they knew that Nigeria is just like a tiger in the paper, that we can only back, but we cannot bite.
I
so
know we're
that
almost
is the
out of
problem.
time at this point, but,
Yes.
but quickly,
I also have a last question. Although in just few minutes, you made mention of some of the lessons that African leaders should learn from this Niger crisis. So what are some of these points you would actually outline for Nigerian leaders to learn?
Okay, the first thing is that we need to put our house in order. We need to understand that in an environment where people are not happy, where people do not believe in their leaders, or where people do not believe that their leaders are actually serving their interest, what happened in Nigerian Republic can happen in such an environment. It's not even just about it's not just about the military coup. Look at what is happening even in Nigeria, in the southeast, for example. People would rather listen to IPOB than to listen to the government. Even the state governor, if IPOB said nobody should come out, even the state governor would rather sit in his house. So it shows that people do not believe in our government. So it is high time our government begins to take the step that will make people to believe in them. When people believe in the system, then definitely nobody will be able to come. In every society, there will always be people with backward mindset. There will always be people who want to. In Nigeria, as we even talking, there are people that want to take over the government. That's it. But because they look at what is going on, it's not as if probably we don't have anybody that say, okay, that I have ambition to take over the government. So there will be people like that. But in a situation where things are moving forward, no, they will not have any excuse to do to take any wrong step. So that is the first thing. So we need to put our house, especially in Nigeria, we need to put our house in order, and we need to work on our economy. It is only when our economy is working, that's when we will be able to work for other African countries. But now that we are having a problem, it's going to be difficult for us to even get ourselves involved in what is going on in Niger Republic. So we need to do that. Then the second thing is that our leaders, we need to be able to live by example. If you are condemning others for doing something wrong, then we too should also be able to look at ourselves and say, okay, are we actually not committing the same mistakes that these individuals these individuals that we are accusing have committed? So these are the steps these are the most important steps, because in every foreign policy, it is the domestic policy that dictates what the country does, what the country does outside. Why is it that in South Africa that we are not having these problems around South Africa? If you look at South African countries, Zimbabwe, there are a lot of issues there. Zambia, a lot of other countries around there, but they respect South Africa. They see South Africa as the leader. And what is helping South Africa is because in terms of domestic economy, the economy is very strong. so they have viable economy, so it's quite easy for them to get themselves involved. So then also it is also high time that we need to start investing on our own manufacturing system in Nigeria. In, like we said earlier, now they wanted to get involve themselves in what is going on in Niger Republic, but you cannot do that because we have crisis at home. Even the situation where we have military, we cannot take them to Niger Republic because all those equipments, we don't even have those equipment. But assuming we could manufacture those things in our own country, it would have been easier for us. Okay, that now we are moving our military to Mali tomorrow, we are moving our military to Benin Republic tomorrow, but now we don't have that resources any longer. So these are the things that we basically have to work on. We just have to focus on our own domestic economy so that people will be able to respect us whenever our president talks.
All right, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
I know Ezekiel has another question to ask, but maybe we'll leave it for
I
some
understand.
other time. Hope you join us again next time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you to our viewers for joining us on this episode of Daybreak Africa. And just as our guests have already highlighted some points for our African leaders to learn from, so that we do not also fall into such situations in the nearest future. However, this is Will be handing you over to our Lagos station that has a package prepared for you. Please stay tuned. While I sign out, see you again next time. I'm Angela DAKU.
Have a wonderful day ahead. I remain Ezekiel. Okay.